friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average Canadian wolfpack come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A safe space where being yourself is the ultimate goal. Each week we will bring you new episodes sharing our experiences on a ton of different topics in hopes we get a better understanding of ourselves, each other, and this crazy world we live in. We want to build a community where we can show up as ourselves, be real, and lay it all out there. By sharing our experiences, we hope to reach others who can relate so we can all help each other learn, grow, and heal. But please keep in mind, as a disclaimer, none of us here are professionals. No one is giving any advice. We are strictly speaking of our life experiences, our opinions, and for entertainment purposes only. Now, with that being said, grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. We hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, supporter, watcher, we just want to thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy and I am the host of the show. And you guys, I am just so freaking excited. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank each and every one of you for listening to us, supporting us, reaching out to do your stories, to share your everything, to share how we've changed something or a thought process or how we've just brought some positivity in your life. It's just been absolutely fucking incredible. And I just really wanted to take a second to say thank you. Also trying out a new thing where I don't make my guests go through this whole entire workaround. I know I do have my intro, but each and every single episode is different. So I feel like each one deserves its own introduction as well. So today we're on episode 89 and we're doing homeschooling one-on-one. And y'all, I have the best guest for this. I'm so fucking excited, but I just want to take a second to say thank you. But thank you guys. You know you're the best. Let's get on to the show. All right, babes, it's time to get on to our guest of the show. And y'all, I am just so excited. I finally get to see this beauty's face in as closest to real life as we can. So I'd like to introduce our guest, Lindsay. Hey, babe, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Thank you so much for coming and joining me on your Saturday morning. I'm just like, what a way to wake up. I can't wait.
I was like, I love to talk, so that's totally cool.
And that's the coolest thing about our friendship is being an hour ahead of you too. It's like when you're getting up for your day, I'm getting up for mine. And I swear majority of my mornings over the last at least year and a half since we've been friends has been talk about everything, every topic we've talked about. And I fucking appreciate about you so much because I feel like we're very aligned, but in any places that we aren't, we respect that of each other and we ask each other stuff and we have real adult conversations. So I just want to say thanks for that.
I appreciate you too. I honestly love the little relationship we're creating.
We do. It's so good. And it's so crazy because I used to think before when online came in that online friends and relationships weren't they were just surface level. And especially the last couple of years, it's been very apparent how actually very vital they have been to my mental health and to survival and to my growth. And it's just people like you that I've been able to bounce back and forth and been I'm having an honest moment, help me. Or, hey, I think differently. Can you help me understand your side? And it's been so fucking respectful. And it's helped me do that with other people too. So yay us. Yay us.
The funny thing about all of that is long ago, my sister was someone who made friends online, and I used to make fun of her and be I don't get it. And then now I'm hey, I understand. You just find your little people.
You do. And I'm hey, so we talked the other day. I was so we're going to have a Be Real retreat or something where all the girls that, have guests on the show and that think the same, we could go to Mexico now that we can all go and something like that. Do it. It's I get it. We could go so many places. So anyways, first and foremost, thank you because I feel we'll be able to connect. And as soon as just the last little bit, so obviously everyone knows with the introduction, we're talking about homeschooling and you are one of the people that has actually really opened my eyes to that as a possibility. I think most of us are ingrained to believe that is crazy hard to do, which I'm not saying, I'm not taking away, but it's just more of an outlandish idea. But I think after the pandemic, when parents started to see that they could do it they had no choice, but that it wasn't they had to do it wasn't maybe as scary as the original thought. And it was kind of hey, maybe this is something that I want to do. So before we get into that, look, I fucking squirreled within the first 3 seconds.
Here we go.
Here we go already. So before we jump in though, Linz, can you tell me a little bit more in the community, just a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and maybe after that, start off with what made you decide to take homeschooling up as a full-time career now?
Right? Like full-time job. Well, obviously my name is Lindsay. We know that. I'm a mom of just one, which is sometimes weird in the homeschool realm. Like it's not quite the norm to have just one. So that's another thing that I'm, not on the
Pioneering
track, I guess. Yeah. And so I'm a mom of one. I live in Alberta. Most of my family's in Ontario. So we moved out here with my husband. And so it's just us. So again, it's having to create that community, not having that right there for me. And yeah, I work from home, so that also helps my situation. But yeah, I really don't know how to introduce myself. I'll be completely honest. I'm the worst. People are like, "What are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a me." Like
I'm a me.
I don't know. The best way to get to know me is to just follow me on social media. I'm pretty real on there. Like you'll get to know me without me telling you who I am. Like I don't know how to tell you who I am. You'll figure it out.
No, that's amazing. And it's true though. And that's why I think we connected, because it was more like, hey, I'm just going to be who I am. And those that want to take stuff, take what you need. If it's not for you, leave it. If you're here, great. If you go, great. But this is it. And I'm really drawn to that. And it's the same way. I know on the show, I'm always like, I ask people that, but sometimes people have stuff and some people don't. And that's totally fine. So I'm like, I don't know what I would say. But then I guess I had a whole podcast episode about it. So I guess it gets easier.
It does. And I feel like it sort of transitions. And I think that's the thing right now is I feel like I'm in that transition period of like letting go of an older business and then actually working into starting, it's going to be called Strength Connection Change Schooling probably. And I'm going to be I'm actually taking a course currently for child, youth, and family coaching. So I'll be able to help people move into this, the connective parenting that I'm obsessed with and all of those types of things. And I had to kind of get through that moment of like, I'm a mom of one. Like, I don't know how it works if you have more than one. Like, I don't know if I'm the right person. And I was like, no, I like kids. I know what's up. So yeah, moving through that. So right now, I guess that's what it is about me, but it's not quite started or opened. And honestly, I think by the time this podcast airs, I may have some things dropped and ready to go for the community. So we'll see. But yeah, so it's like that transition period where I'm like, I don't really know who I am at the moment.
And how many times, so that's one thing I think that I like to tell my younger friends, because I am so old. Just friends that I have that are like 10 years younger that are going through the same stuff that I am. And I'm like, dude, it's awesome. You'll get through this one, but I just want to be fucking real with you. It's going to happen again and it's going to be harder and you're going to change so much, especially like those of us that have had to kind of go through a spiritual awakening the last couple of years and really look inside and been like, is this what I truly want? Did I get caught up in what I think I want? And this is where all this human design has all played into most of our lives too, is starting to understand why are we here? And what are those limiting questions that we're having? Like, oh, I'm just a parent of one. I couldn't do this. Fuck, man. Hell yeah. Why couldn't you? Like, why can't you be that way? And now you're leading the way for those that do it and breaking through those stigmas and showing and empowering moms. Like, if this is what you want to fucking do it. And here's how to do it. And I'm so excited. And it is cool. So what we'll do now is your transitional time. So let's make sure in like 6 to 8 months, we'll have you back and see where you are. And it's just like, the cool thing is being vulnerable about like, hey, I'm starting this new journey. I have no idea. I don't have everything ready, but I'm doing it and I'm committing and I'm putting it out there. And what I find is cool is you almost seem to receive more because you do that. And so once you can break through that, like, I don't really fucking care. I just feel this deep inside. I need to do it. It feels right. It lights me the fuck up. Like, you have to really work at like getting out of your head and listening to your body. Right. And so it's like, that's so exciting. I'm so excited. So yeah, I want to have you back on after it's all set up. So then you can really, share that part as well. So perfect timing. So to get into that, that's fucking awesome, dude. I'm stoked. I mean, I just have cats, so I don't know if you're going to have like a cat one for online, but
maybe, you never know. I got two of them now.
I know. Look at you, a cat mom now.
Right?
So to get into that, then what was it so currently with your one child, what's your day look like and when did you start doing the homeschooling?
So we would have started all the way through, but touching back to the way that the world's been over the past couple of years, his kindergarten year, a lot of the programming was closed down. And so he is a very social kid, and that was essentially sending him to school was the only place that I could get him like regularly interacting with other children. So he did go to kindergarten in the public school system 2 days a week. It was basically a play date for us, but that's okay. It was fun. Like kindergarten is very play based here in Alberta. So it was really, really good. And then we just started rolling into it in grade 1. We really were homeschooling in kindergarten as well, just in terms of like what we were teaching him at home. But he went to school. And then grade 1 was when we went full-time homeschool, and now he's in grade 2. And yeah, our day is pretty crazy. We wake up, I usually have a morning activity set out for him because I need a minute in the morning. He's very talkative. I love him so much, but he's very talkative. And he's on as soon as he wakes up. So I put a game out. We have like board games or just activities, STEM stuff, whatever, something that he can do without like a lot of me
guidance
interacting or talking. So I kind of like get my coffee ready, get his breakfast set up, whatever. He's doing his morning activity, and then we move on into school stuff, and I break it down. So that's the nice thing about homeschool is we don't have to put too much into one day. I can say like today is like we're doing reading stuff, and like everything that I'm focusing that day is reading. Like even at the grocery store, maybe I'll say, oh, what does that say? Oh, what does that say? And have him like reading throughout the day. And then, you know, the next day it will be math stuff. And so I'll be like, oh, can you help me add this up? Oh, how much does this make? And stuff like that. So we're really focusing on that topic, but it's not so much of like, do all these papers and then move on to another topic and do all these papers. The way that I remember school being was very like lots of topics in one day, all of the time, which was a lot for me. So yeah, we do that.
Stimulating. It's a lot.
It is. And I sometimes am like, what did I retain in that like bam, bam, bam kind of situation? Whereas I feel like I can visually see, and like every day we see him like grasping things and getting things. And so it's cool to be able to take the time, like I said, even on math, to spend a whole day just talking about random math things. By the end of the day, it's like, well, we're done. We never have to teach that again. You're obviously smart. Like we're done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just nice to be able to focus like that. So that's what our days usually are, is a morning activity and then a bit of schoolwork. In schoolwork, I really focus on like how he's feeling that day too, because I want him to learn and I want him to want to learn. So for example, the other day he was fighting so hard on some paper, like math work paper things that I had, and he just did not want to do it for whatever reason. I said, okay, that's fine. Can you do maybe just one of them? And then we'll move on and we'll play a game. And so we played Rumacube. So I don't know if everybody knows what Rumacube is, but it's literally about putting like runs of numbers. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we spent 2 hours playing this game, and he's like, I'm winning. Like he's so into the game. Meanwhile, I'm like, you've counted, you've added, you've written down numbers. Like, cool, we're done math now. So there's ways to like integrate it where I'm like, you're learning what I need you to learn, but I'm not fighting you on it, because that's not fun either.
Well, it's the delivery, right? And it's, you know, and I mean, and there's got to be boundaries with that too, right? Because you obviously don't want them to be like, well, I don't want to do this. Okay, well, we're not going to do this. It's just redirecting until they're adults and they can understand, or a little bit more developed, or they can understand like, okay, this, because this emotion's coming up that I don't want to, but I still have to do it for this, you know, whereas as a child, I don't think they just go on that emotion without that thought process. So it's like, okay, in your mind, I'm giving you what you want, but I'm actually getting what I want. But it's just
the way that we talk about it is you have to do what you have to do before you get to do what you want to do. So it's perfectly fine that we want to play a game, but you have to do at least one of these sheets. And so it's like, he's got the understanding that I have to do what I have to do, even though I don't want to do it right now. And I don't force it where it's the 3 or 4 sheets that we originally planned, but we're kind of both getting it, because that's something that I agree with, that I don't want him to think that life's just about, you never have to do anything that bothers you, or you just get to move on to things that are great. And it's like, well, that's not life. Like, no. Yeah. But also I think that
participation trophies.
And like, they're just like, kids are just so young. I feel like teaching them at like a, you know, mindset way where like they're young enough to understand rules, but also they're so young that they are very emotional little beings. They don't know that like it's not okay to freak out over paperwork. Like it's not like, we know to just do the paperwork. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to do it and it's going to be over with. But they have to be taught that. So I feel like, you know, adding in, and sometimes I add in more. I'll say you have to do 2 sheets today. We only did 1 sheet last week. You've got to do 2. And so there is that, but that's again where it's like I get to do one-on-one, not only like lessons in terms of math and English, but I get to do that like social emotional learning where I'm like, this is what's up in the real world. I know this is how it feels, but this is what we have to do. Like
totally.
Yeah.
That's fundamental.
That's my favorite part, honestly.
Yeah. And that's a fundamental thing. And I think the coolest part, I want to go back to like the part where you teach him math, but then you also do those things at the grocery store. Like, you know, if I have 2 apples, how many, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that you're doing. Because one thing I think that's lacking in regular school life is that connection to, okay, this is what I'm doing in school. How does that reflect in real life? What is this going to teach me? Right. So it's like, being out in the world and being like, okay, now, obviously down the road, you're not going to make them budget now, but say down the road, you're going to be like, okay, well, you have $75 to go to the grocery store. What are you going to do? And how much are you going to get? And how are ways to save money? You're going to add coupons. You're going to add this savings card, whatever. That's teaching them math and the fundamentals they need, but also how to apply that in real life. It's great that we all learn geometry or what the fuck ever, but where do I need to learn that? I would have liked to learn how to budget my money. To understand when I buy something on a credit card, even though it's $10, it's depending on where you at, could be $17. You know what I'm saying? Like it's those types of things that we aren't taught that you are able to do in that moment, because as a parent, as a homeschooler, you're also not just looking at that education, you're looking at how is my child going to use this in the real world. And I think that is something that's so unique to homeschooling that I'm sure schooling did back in the day when they weren't overwhelmed, but it's just not that way anymore. Right. And it's,
and that's the struggle is I feel like school has like the right idea. Like, okay, we want to teach kids, we want to fill them up, we want all these things, but I feel like it's just grown. Like thinking back to when I was a student and like remembering my parents being like, oh my gosh, there's 15 kids in this class. It's so big. And I was like, oh, you know, grade 1, 15 kids, whatever. And now it's like these classes and normal classes, just about 30 kids. And it's like, I don't understand how one teacher could possibly give all of these students what they need in every aspect. And that's where it's like, it's tough because I'm obviously a homeschooler. So I'm like, I jumped out, I'm doing my own thing, but I look at the system because I do know like people need to utilize it. I'm like, how do we make it better again? And I don't know, but that's my mind always goes there. I don't know, but I do know that
you're starting to find a way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're trying to find a way. You're going to gain all that knowledge and start empowering people. And then maybe bringing back localized small schools with individuals will be more than just, okay, because they have a degree from school. And I'm not bashing any form of education by any means. However, it's not the only way, just with everything. To me, it's not the only way and it's not for everybody. And there's lots of reasons, I'm sure, for myself that if I have, you know, kids, because we do talk about adopting one day, you know, these are questions that I want. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if we're going to adopt in the next 5 years, how can I set us up so that I can do this? Because I really do love that. And I'm sure there's days that you want to bash your head against the wall and wish you could just be like, go to school. But that's with everything in life. And at the end of the day, you know that this feels right for you and you're doing the right thing by your son. Right. And it's leading the way for other parents that aren't in love with, you know, like some of the shit. I'm not even a parent, and some of the shit that I'm seeing that comes out of the school system, especially out of BC, is fucking shocking. Like talking about like masturbation, talking about, I seen something go around the other day about the different political parties and saying how conservatives are extreme right wing. And it's like, this is where I worry, because now you're starting to hear, especially the crazy ones on TikTok are being like, mind your business. I'm teaching your kid. It's not your fucking business. Just drop them off. And it's like
to me, because so that's actually something that came up. Bryson, 7 years old, 7 this month, is asking some like existential questions, like where do we come from? How did this happen? Like what's going on? Like how did this? And like even just questions. We got the cat neutered, so he's like, but can boy cats make like do boy cats have babies? Is what he said, and we're like, well, no, like no.
Let's talk about this right now.
Let's go. So yeah, that was fun. But he does have and I said to like my husband, I was like, can you imagine? He was asking these questions to a teacher that first of all is busy, second of all is like overwhelmed with her own life, her own whatever she's got going on. She's got 30 kids all asking like, how did the world become the world? And she can't answer all of them. And even if she did, what if her and me, like, and the thing is I also struggle because it's like, if me and the teacher don't align, well, later on in life, me and Bryson may not align. Right. And that's okay. Like my job is to say to him, like, this is what some people think, this is what some people think. Here's what we as a family have thought, and like teach him to kind of bring up his own ideas. Like he's still to this day, he asked me to bring him, we're not super religious in any way, but he asked me the other day if I would take him to church because he's interested in like what is this place? Like, he's like, do they play there? Do they? And so it's like, I can't explain to him. So at some point we've been looking around, to be honest, I was like, I'll take him one Sunday and just be like, this is what's up. So then it's like gone out of his mind. And that's something that I think about all the time, is like, these questions are in these kids' heads, and they're not able to, they don't have the time. Like at school, probably not going to come up. And then at home, life just feels like, when I see my neighbors, for example, coming home after school and then whipping back out to practices and then coming back in, and I'm just like, when did you sit and like
be a family
and hang out and be a family and go for a walk and like just all of these things? And yeah, and it kind of, I don't know, I feel like kind of what you were saying, and like thinking about what's coming out of the schools and like also applying things that I'm teaching him to real life. It's also a matter of like me really sitting down and thinking, like, what are we teaching them in school? And like, what do they need? Reality is like, some of this stuff is like completely unnecessary. I shared a reel the other day kind of pointing out like that CRT word's kind of jumping up into Canada. And I know it's like a buzzword, and I'm not someone who's like, these like children shouldn't know what racism is. Like, no, I think that they should. But I also feel like we need to look at what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, because things aren't really changing, right? So we can say, I've been learning about it since I was a child, and we're still teaching it. So like, as the parents, I think it's time for us to be like, okay, what is it that you're teaching them? Because we need things to change, right? And so, yeah, I just think it's a matter of being involved in like what he's learning and understanding why he has to learn it. And I don't know, I think it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's a lot of just feeling the way that it goes, you know, like
totally. And it's a bunch of things. That's why it's like a multifaceted thing, right? It's not just like, oh, I distrust and think the way that the school system run and it doesn't need to be there. No, not saying that. What I'm saying is that right now, where the state of it is, you have to decide as a parent, you know, and it's really unfortunate that a lot of parents can't make that decision. And that's where it gets really scary, because we're getting in a place where both parents have to work to be able to afford their house and to be able to afford groceries and gas. Think back to like when you were younger, it was more common that one parent worked and the other didn't, because they could afford on that salary to take care of every single person. That mom there could be, or dad, whoever could be then the parent that is being able to sit down and spend time and
do
dinner ready when you get home, so that you could sit down and as a meal and then enjoy your time. I think people, one thing too, I'm going to sidetrack because it's me, but one thing that I really hate that's coming out of society a lot, and I feel like they're going to teach that in schools because that's really where things start, is the family unit. And this weird fucking feminism that if you make your man meals and you set your family up for success by cleaning the home or doing these extra tasks that are deemed now some sort of like weird anti-woman thing, that's a bad thing. And I'm thinking, y'all, no. I wish we could go back 20, 30 years where I could stay at home and be, well, maybe not attacked by birth control and have infertility. That's a whole other thing, but be able to be at home and be able to take care of my husband that goes and works, because as a wife, that is my job as a mother to take care of them. And I take that job. And does it come with a financial thing? No. But then again, being attached to money is a whole other thing. It's an energy exchange. The man goes and makes the money and takes care of us. We do the things. And then the mom takes care of the family and the home, so that the man can leave for those hours and make that money. And then there can be a presence and someone that leaves, and there's that family unit. And it just blows my mind now that it's like anti-woman to want to make your husband a meal or be the stay-at-home mom that takes, like, how did that fucking get to be this way? How is this crunchy mama thing a thing when it's like that is where everything is based on? Y'all have got this fucking backwards. Like,
oh, I get it all the time. And that's actually another thing about, like, I have a son and I'm like, he's a manly man. Like, he likes to go out and shoot his bow and like play in the dirt. And, you know, he likes to open the door for me. He watches his dad, you know, do things, and he'll be like, I got it, mama. And like, he likes to make breakfast in bed and like do things like that. So he likes to do things for people. And I want him to see that, like, he deserves that back, right? Like, I show that love and affection to his dad and all those types of things. And yeah, I do think about what is the message that we're sending to these kids? Like, what is it that they're learning? And that's another thing too. It's a whole other aspect of being at home, is that you can really instill some like values in the children, and in terms of connection, like your friends mean a lot. Like, a lot of the times I remember coming home from school with a problem, and so-and-so is being mean or whatever. And it was just kind of like, oh, we'll ignore them or move on or become friends, whatever. And honestly, I look at back and that's just kids. It's just, they're just, oh, he likes you. Like,
he likes you. He's bullying you.
He's bullying you because he likes you. And I just think back to some of those messages and I'm like, oh, did they actually think that? Or were they so busy that they were just kind of just saying something to move on with the day? Because I look back, my mom specifically was a very busy single mom. And so I think of like coming home after the day and me now as a mom, imagining myself going to work, busy all day, coming home, and then having my lovely Bryson just blah, 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 to me. I don't know that I would answer him the way, no, legit. Like even some days that I am like mom of the year, I guess I'm like, I'm gonna, go away. But like at the end of the day, I don't know that I would have the patience to answer him in the ways that like I think that he deserves. And so I think a lot of kids maybe aren't getting that, again, social and emotional learning where they can say like, this friend is hurting your feelings. So let's look at like, do we know, like maybe they had a bad day at home? Like maybe they like, let's be empathetic and I just think that that's a huge thing that's missing. And I get to like do that emotional side of learning too. So
understanding and teaching them understanding and compassion and having the time to do that. And that's what I mean. It's not set up. So when people say, you're just saying a conspiracy that there's something against the family unit. I'm like, isn't there though? Like, how can you not see that when now both people have to work because they can't afford this? And that's because of the prices. That's not because people changed or that changed. It changed because it had to, because people had to adapt to that. And then, you always hear about like those George Soroses of the world that started things like feminism to make women feel like they thought that they were less for doing those things. And in my opinion, I don't think that at all. I think that's amazing to be able to do that, especially families nowadays that can actually do this shit and do what they need to do to make it happen is incredible. And again, a lot of people had to just figure it out during the pandemic and that sucked 100%. But I think it also helped empower people to realize how much they actually have the power to do themselves. And if they really put their heads together as a family unit and work together on what your individual family needs are, they can be met. But you have to block out everything else that other people are doing, saying, feeling. You have to really worry, that's what I love about Meg, that she always says you always have to worry about your four walls, like inside your brain and inside your home, because that's what's going to drive the next generation, right? And like the changes that we're going to see. And I hate to say it. And actually this came out on Joe Rogan a couple episodes ago, talking about like realistically, a lot of this like woke ideology or whatever you want to call it usually stems in universities and the schools there, and it trickles down. And then again, we can squirrel as that goes back to like the oil companies that own it and the FDAs and all those kind of things. So schooling is very controlled, in my opinion. Do I think we need a lot of it? Yes. But I also think we, don't look at real life experience enough. It's like, I'm not saying if you have severe mental health, go talk to a friend, but if you're having moments of anxiety, I think it's good to reach out to community and to talk to people about those things, their experiences are, because a lot of studies and data that's gathered is very biased, bought, and very focused on what they want the end result. You know what I mean? So I think those that have broken out of that kind of thought pattern are starting to see the benefits of all these quirky, different things, because it goes against what's been built. And when I say this has been going on for generations, that's what I mean. This goes back generations and people just don't see that, And so
that's like something that like, I feel like for me, I struggle with in terms of like, kind of like you're saying, like in the system, what you just mentioned, like the George Soroses of the world, a lot of people don't look further, right? A lot of people, we're not taught that. We're not taught to say like, where does this come from? Where does this idea come from? Where did this, like, even school, like you just mentioned, like who is putting the money into these schools, like post-secondary, like college, university, like where is everything coming from? And therefore, like if I give you money, you're not going to say what I want you to say. Like, so again, just looking to where it goes, and it's going to trickle down. We can say like, oh, these ideas aren't in public school, but if a student goes to a university and is taught certain ideologies or certain thought processes or whatever, and then comes down and teaches the children, like that's just already ingrained in them. It's the same way as if we're, therapists, they're constantly going to school to learn new tactics and new whatever. Like teachers, they do to a point, but realistically, it's like they go to college, they become a teacher, and then they're a teacher, and they can be a teacher for 50, 60, 70 years if they want. Like And not
teaching the same things in some degrees that don't advance, but then all of a sudden in this one area, when it comes to like feelings, emotions, and and whatever identify, then that it's like over progression. And it's like, there's a disconnect here. Why are we still teaching very old models, very old, like you said, you go to school, you become a teacher, you go out and teach. And yes, I'm sure they have courses where they keep up on stuff. However, the system itself hasn't grown up. It hasn't changed. What initially is being taught in the universities and how things should be aren't changing. And again, you go back and people either don't want to, don't have the time, don't have any understanding that, okay, all this medical stuff, let's say all this pharmaceuticals, we've talked about this in the shows. Where did that come from? Nature. Because what nature does, they recreate those chemicals to take that over, to make money, because nature doesn't make that kind of money. And so when you start thinking about those things, you go, okay, well, what are the nurses being taught? What are the doctors being taught? And that, again, you can teach whatever you want up until grade 12. Once you get into that university and you're paying for that education that you now have to pay back, then you take things a little differently. And that's the word of God to them, like the schooling, right? And one of my doctor friends that I have, he said, a lot of the time you got to think about it this way, and it's not an excuse, but they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school. They just get out. And especially through the whole COVID thing, if they lose their license, how are they going to make money after spending and I'm not saying that, but it was like that, but that really fucks you in a little loop there. So you have to be really thoughtful of when you're going to be doing something. That's why I never understood, like, if you know what you're doing, great. But when people jumped in right after college and had no idea and just did what other people thought, 10 years down the road, hundreds of $1,000s in debt, you don't want to be doing this, and you don't want to be doing this to people. And let's say you were against the vax or something, and then now you're going to lose your practice, and hundreds of $1,000s, can't work anywhere, you're shunned, so then you just keep doing it. And that's across every industry, across everywhere, absolutely. Small or big, right? And I think all of us are really realizing that. So, and I think it starts at school. That's why I think this is why I was like, fuck, we got to talk about homeschooling, man, because
it's true. It's like a matter, like in that school system, like you're saying, once we get to that college level, like you can teach kind of whatever you want, and then you're getting to a college level where people are paying for it. How come when we get to that college level, we aren't like discerning learners? Like we don't know how to like take things and like break them down and be like, okay, so like what I remember in school when I was to write a essay, I was supposed to write both, arguments for and against what I was talking about. And I was supposed to explain where did I get these two things. And so that I could kind of argue from both sides. And I feel like that's been lost. And I don't understand where it's gone, but we're not teaching children to discern things. So like, that's another like whole other aspect of like, why do I homeschool? Because it was like, I really want to teach him how to learn, not what to learn. Like I want to teach him one of the things he wants to read more than most other 7-year-olds, because I told him, if you can learn to read, you can learn to do anything. Like legitimately anything. Like you can pick up a book and you can read it, and you maybe will fail the first 3 times that you try and like rebuild an engine. But if you read that book and you can go back to the pages, you can watch, like, of course we have video and we have whatever, but like, video is so fast. I think that sometimes we forget that it doesn't actually like retain the way that reading something does. Like reading something, you're thinking it, you're reading it, and then you can also say it out loud. And so that's the 3 times, and it's stuck in your brain. So teaching kids why they're doing these things and to teach them how to learn, like where can I get the information about what I want to know about? And then when I learn something, how can I take that information and decipher it and see if I understand it and ask more questions? And I think that the standardized schooling, that's where everything kind of, I mean, we had standardized testing also, but I don't know, something about it recently, it just feels like very much like this is what they have to learn at this point, and they have to know this, and like by kindergarten they must be spelling their names, and by grade 1 they must be reading these particular sight words, and even sight words, it's like, so you're not teaching them how to like read the word, you're just getting them to like memorize that that's and, you're not like helping them and like teaching them, right? Like the breakdown of life. And so that's a big thing too in my brain. I'm like, you're never going to actually learn these things and be able to go out and continue to learn the rest of your life, which is something I think as a society, we always talk about lifelong learning and we're going to learn forever. Like we have all these things we talk about in a society, but then we don't fucking like, we don't put it into the school systems. We're like, like lifelong learning, but don't actually figure out how to learn. And so we have all these adults that get to a place where they're just like, consuming. I'm done school and now I'm working. And so now, I'm a consumer. I work and I consume, and I'm not actually learning how to better myself because I don't know how to learn. No one taught me how to learn. Everyone just taught me to work, how to do what I'm told, and to sit and listen and to repeat and remember. And so I'm awesome at these like computer things. They need me to like I can press that all day, but like I can't think further. And like, why am I doing this?
Where's this purpose? What's more?
And, like,
very basic,
what is the purpose? And so that's something like for us, it drove us right into wanting to school or homeschool, because it was just a matter of like, why? And like that's who I am. Like I've been that person forever. And that's the other thing, is getting to know Bryson in his first 3-4 years of life. And we also had, my sister passed away. So he had a very large like experience where he knew grief, he knew loss, he knew a little bit more about life than a lot of other kids in kindergarten. So we kind of looked at this kid and we were like, he just gets things in a different way. Like he asked a question once that I asked when I was little, and he asked me, does the tire hurt the road when we drive over it? And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember asking my parents this. And it was like, so you just feel and see things in just a different way.
Yeah.
And you don't have time. Honestly, it sounds weird, but I don't think he has time to sit in class and be drunk. Like I felt like it was going to break him. I felt like he was going to stand there and all of this light and bubbly and like just bright human.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like he was just going to be, yeah, like you said, overstimulated and just be like, and come home and be like that meltdown period that a lot of kids do. And I just didn't want that for him. And I feel like that's another passion that I have, is that I do know that there's people who have to send their children to school, but I also have like two sides of that. I have friends who work night jobs. I have friends who work unconventional jobs. Like I have a friend who's a yoga teacher and a single mom and homeschools. And I think she's freaking superwoman, but she's decided what is important to her and her family and made it happen. Right. And so sometimes it's just about that. It's not about being like, oh, we both have to work. You're right. Like we talk about it on the daily. I am very lucky to have a husband who has a great job. I don't have to really work. I do work. I have an income like where I am selling stuff and work from home, but like, I don't need to specifically, but if we ever got to a point there we had to, I've already said, I am willing to work night shift to make this happen. Like we're not.
It's more important. Yeah. Like I'll stock a Walmart shelves at nighttime.
If I have to,
if I have to set him up, because you see the value and you see where it robbed you in the past. And what I just kind of want to flip back to, which I think is the coolest thing that you've ever said, or that not you ever said, you say a lot of cool things, but in this episode was that like you want to teach him how to learn. And that is super important, because there is no time that a teacher can sit there with all, and this is not a judge at teachers, is what, again, same with nurses. It's not that, it's what they've put you in, what the system has now put you in, that what you started to be there for kids, we have to admit when there's 30 and each one has their own individual unique ways of learning, reacting, whatever. And you don't have as much time with 30 kids to do it all that way. And you don't get to teach them how to learn in the way that they learn, because some people are hands-on. Some people read. Some people need both. Some people need to read it and go do it. Some people need all 5 fucking senses on to retain anything. Sometimes it's repetition for some people. For me, it's like, okay, I get what you're saying. Let's apply it together. Sit with me as I do it. Let's have some feedback on how I did. And now I'm fucking confident to go forward. That was never a thing in school. It was like, sit there and listen. Well, I couldn't see, so I couldn't read the board, but I was a super smart kid. I could read in front of me, but no one knew that until like grade 4. So, you know, just things like that as a parent with the hands-on, you can see that immediately. Like you said, you knew from day one that he, not sensitive. I don't like that. Not sensitive in like a sensitive, but senses everything. Senses everything. All senses.
I like to say aware. I like to say he's very aware of his surroundings. Because like I am always like, I don't think he's sensitive, because he's like, you know, I don't like that word either, because I'm like, they've created that word into like a
negative. Yeah. Let's change that. Let's say like sensitive is a good thing. Being aware of energies and people and that earth is a living being. Everything is connected. Some people don't hit that later in life. Some kids get it. And those are very special kids, because I feel like my brother was that way too. And it wasn't really understood. And it was like, oh, he has all these mental illnesses, put him on medication. And I think that just dulled all those special things that, you know, are his internal guide that will guide him to be. And it's more like, let's hone in and figure out how to work through those. Like you said, hey, this is going to suck, but that's life. Let's work through it. Let's work through his emotions and practice when this comes up. What do we do? How do we fix it? How do we move on? Because most adults can't regulate their fucking emotions.
No, they cannot. And like, that's another thing I always say is his lessons cost less right now. Everything that he's doing costs less right now. When it's like, so for example, he forgot his water bottle. He's thirsty and whatever. But to me, it's like, like maybe a good mom would have grabbed his water bottle, but like, he's not going to die from being thirsty, and he's going to remember the next time to grab his water bottle. Same with his clothing, like a natural consequences. The other day, he's like, can I wear shorts? And I was like, I wouldn't, but whatever. And he stepped outside and came back in and went and put pants on. And I was like, there you go. Like, he's making his own decisions. Whereas if I'm like, put your pants on, we do have, and I'm not going to say I never do. We have headbutting days. We have days where like, I got to go and we don't have time for all this like lovey-dovey,
Jibber
like
jabber.
jibber jabber, get your stuff done. Like, I don't care. Put your shoes on. We got to go. Like, yeah, like, you know, like, let's go. And so that's the other thing is sometimes I feel like when I talk about it, everyone's like, oh, I just don't have the time. Like, I could never do that with my kid. And it's like, I don't do it every day. Like, there are days we don't have time. Like, we got to go pick up, you know, dad. And it's like, I don't have time to worry about what freaking shoes you want. Just put your shoes on and like, let's go. I don't care. Like, stuff like that. But like other days, it's like, I do have the time. And so I make the time, like grocery shopping, for example. I have friends who are like, I hate grocery shopping with my children. Well, I've created it to be like an event. So we sit down together and we look through, you know, what do we need? And we write down the list together, and then we go and he shops, and we always go to the, like, as much as I hate it, my heart is like, oh, these corporate things, but we do go to the self-checkout because then he does it, and he's like learning it and he's scanning it. And then actually most of the ladies at our grocery store now do know him. And then they're like, oh, here's your bags. They let him type in his bags. And so just like, I create everything that for sure it takes a while. And if I was someone who worked and had to go after school, I wouldn't necessarily have the time to do these things, and I would need to do them in other ways. But it's just something I'm so excited about and so passionate about, that like, if you do get to take that time and get to homeschool your kids, like there's just ways. It doesn't have to be like this hard, scary thing. Like, I think we all view it as like bringing school home. Like, how on earth am I going to do that here? It's like, you're not. That's the whole point. Like, you don't have to do that. It's the magic of like
being in charge.
Like just being in charge and letting them even be in charge a little bit. Like, because people don't like to hear that you give your kid a voice. They don't like that because kids are kids and we should be telling them what to do. But I'm like, if we continue to tell them what to do, at what point are they going to learn to do it for themselves? Like, my big thing is I have a brother. My brother is 20. He turned 20 this year, and he is in college. And just the other day, my mom said a thing that he needs to bring home a paper, and she had to tell him where it was, exactly in his bedside table where it was. And I was just like, that sickens me. I love my little brother. And my husband was the same, and he'll say it too. Like, he's like, yeah, my mom babied me to the point of like, I couldn't do stuff. And I was like, and I won't do that. Like, sometimes there will be moments like my husband will be like, well, just grab him a sweater. I'm like, if he's cold, he's cold. Like, it's fine. If we have to leave the park early, it's fine. Like, it's certain things that like maybe sound a little harsh, but I look at them really lovingly. And then there's a lot of times where I get to be super, super loving in places where I feel like people are kind of like cold and harsh. Like, they're like, I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. Like, I'm just different. And
you need to hear it. And that's why I think it's important that those things are important and taught at home, and you should have time. Like, you know, I don't know, as the last couple of years, like I love my cats, but I a lot of time didn't realize how much responsibility, because it's like, oh, they're cute and it's fun. And, you know, but then it's like, no, they have medical problems. They have all this and that, you know, and it's just like, there's a lot to everything, and it's going to be unique to everybody, you know, and it really sucks when people want to do something and then they can't. But I think the biggest thing that's important is like, okay, if that's what you want, what do you need to start doing right now to make that happen in the future? And just because this year you can't homeschool because it seems so out of the realm, if that is truly what you want, then why not think, okay, what do I need to do this next year?
Yeah.
Or what are some of the lessons that homeschoolers do that I can bring home so that I can supplement what maybe isn't being taught in a direct emotional reaction kind of way at home, if that isn't something that you could possibly do? And I know a lot of people are going to be like, for one, especially me, because I don't have kids, like, you're ignorant to know. And that's all fine and dandy. You can pick whatever your life. What I'm saying is, if this resonates with you and you want to do that, and I'm sorry if that's not in your wheelhouse, absolutely. But like you said, there's some people that are there ways that you can sacrifice and be a little bit uncomfortable, perhaps an ego thing. Maybe is it like, oh, I don't want to work at a Walmart, you know, like, not to be that way. I've had moments of my life like that too. I went from
we all have them.
Right, a really expensive office managing job in the oil field to a bud tender when the industry opened. I went from like $35 an hour to $18 an hour. And, you know, that was a big jump. And it was like, I hated it at first, but I was like, but you're doing your purpose now. Now I look at my career and I'm in corporate cannabis doing my absolute job that I love, but I didn't get that. I've worked 5 years to get to where I am today, making no fucking money. Right. But if I would have sat in that moment and been like, oh, well, I can't do that. I can't possibly get back to the money that I made in the oil field, which not for a bit with cannabis, but, you know, I don't need that right now. You go look at the long term, you know? So same with you. Yeah. You went to kindergarten, you gave it a try, and you're like, this isn't for me. Right. And it was great that you were able to make that happen right away. But with some people, if you can't, don't think that you cannot. reach out to those that do it and ask, don't be, I'm not trying to be this way, but lately I've been really like reflective. Like if you're jealous about it, figure out why. That usually means that's what you want for yourself, right? So then instead be like, how did you do that, Lindsay? How did you put yourself in that situation? I bet you people didn't think, oh, maybe I should just change jobs, but what's more important? And that's cool. If your career is more important, that I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
And you're allowed to feel that way. And that's the thing is I think, again, going back to like, what are we taught? What are we not taught? I don't think we're taught to really look inwardly and like, what do I want? Like, again, school systems, like, and I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It's like the herd mentality. You go to school and you get the right shoes because you don't want the kids to laugh at you, and you wear your hair the right way, and you stand in line and you don't say the thing, and you don't like Pokemon anymore because, oh my gosh, I'm in grade 7 now and I can't like Pokemon. And that's, that makes me so mad because we're literally teaching kids to not listen to themselves and what do you like. And like, we talk all that bullshit of like anti-bullying, like, be who you are. Like, no, what you mean is like, be a girl if you want to be and you're a boy. Like, that's what you mean. You don't mean be who you are. That is not what you mean. You're still allowing a lot of bullying in terms of just the way the system is. Like, let's stand in line and that's going down the rabbit hole of me being like, I don't like school system, but it's like, it's not, again, I have a love for teachers. If you're someone who goes to school and wants to go into that, like high freaking five, go in, most of them go in trying to change it. They do. They're going in, they're like, hey, we're going to fix it. Whether they're trying to change it for the good or the bad, that's a different story, but they are going in to try and change things. And I just don't think it's changing. I think we're just creating the system of people who don't know how to look inwardly at what they want. And that's another thing that comes down to, like you're saying with homeschool, like maybe you have to look at your job, and maybe it does come down to ego, but maybe it's also just a matter of looking at like, why do you want to homeschool? Like, what is drawing you to what I'm saying? Is it the fact that I get to give him social emotional learning? Because you can do that without sending him to school. Is it the fact that, like, I'm talking about statistics, like children only normally, like the average child is only outside for 4 to 7 minutes per day. Like, that's insane. They need at least 3 hours outside per day. That's just like, that's ingrained everywhere. That's like a statistic that's been studied. Like when they do better, it's like, it's normal. Like it's, we aim for more than that, but it is what it is. And so then just thinking like, okay, I have to utilize school and they're only getting tops 40 minutes outside with the recesses and stuff. How can I walk them to school and walk them home and just give that time where we're talking and we're asking about the day and we're decompressing? Like, life, even if you can't homeschool, there's places where you can say, like, what is it about homeschool that I want to bring? Like you said, even those lessons at home, is it that, like, we look at it as like tutoring, like, oh, if my kid's not doing good in reading, I must get them a reading tutor. Or maybe they don't understand why they need to learn to read and they think that it's a bore, and maybe they're like me and I actually had not trouble in reading. I was really good in reading, but that's why I got in trouble, is because I would be long past the class and I didn't see the purpose of me waiting for them. And when they would say, oh, read this sentence, I would have to say, where are we? And I would look like I didn't know, wasn't paying attention, all these other things. And realistically, I was done the book. And I'm like, I can't slowly listen to these other people. And so it's a matter of like speaking to your kid and being like, do they need a tutor? Don't just go by what the teacher's saying in this letter C and, oh, they're only reading to this level and da 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 da. It's like, well, why? Like, what's that? Do you not understand why learning is important? And so it's like really looking at like, what is it that's drawing you towards what I'm saying or what other homeschoolers are saying?
Yeah.
But then also to be aware that there's more than just homeschool. Like right now, I'm going to preface this with, it's not even really open yet, but currently in Central Alberta, there is a group of people and I'm involved working on stuff with them where we're trying to set up basically pod schooling. So like there is things available, especially if you're in cities and closer to cities, where you can drop your kid off to a bunch of other homeschool mamas who will homeschool your child. And of course, you're going to want to make sure, again, alignments and all those things, but you don't get to do that with school unless you're going to pay to send them to private school, right? And again, here in Alberta, you get what you get. And here in Alberta, we're lucky. We do get funding. We can send into our school boards and say, hey, I'm going to homeschool. And so our funding from the school gets diverted. So if you did say want to homeschool and you couldn't, and you wanted to do a pod, you could apply for homeschool funding and then use that funding to pay for a pod and send your kid off. And so like there's so many options that people don't know about because there's such a stigma that we always do. Just yesterday the kids were rolling in leaves and we're like, look at them weird homeschool kids. Like we kind of just joke. Like we're like them weirdos over there. Or like
kids, what the fuck?
You know, like what are they doing?
Why aren't they doing math inside?
Yeah, like strange.
I feel like it's like, I don't know if you want to think about this like in a spirituality way. It's like the world was progressing and then COVID hit and now it's like flipping itself and mirroring everything. And everyone's now trying to work back to how like progression is great in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that it's not. Medical progression has been good. School advancements, those things, we need school to teach those scientists and those doctors and those everybody yes. But to the degree where it's all or nothing, me versus you, this is right, this is wrong, anti versus pro, like that is all starting, all these systems to me are starting to break down where it's gone too far, you know, like we see that all the time, like when we're talking about genders and all that, like that's a huge topic that we're all just starting to learn, but let's have those adult conversations. Let's not bring them before, because this is new charted territory of what we're talking about. Just for one example, you know, and so it's like that progression has now gotten almost a little too far where it's getting dangerous. And there's some ideologies, groups, movements where it's extremists. And because everyone's afraid of hurting feelings, which I understand because we ignored feelings for a long time. Now
we're so care about feelings.
Yeah, they don't though. And that's as an adult and on your journey, how you need to learn to regulate that. And also furthermore, your biggest journey is realizing what someone else's opinion about you is really none of your fucking business. Yeah. And if you truly believe in what you're doing and what you're saying, then those people shouldn't. So if it is, you need to do 1, is this truly how you feel? 2, why is this bothering you? And 3, do I have room to grow here? Is this really, why am I getting triggered? You know, whatever. And so that's what, like, if you look at homeschoolers and you're triggered by what they're doing, ask why. Is it because I want that for myself? Is it because I feel like I can't? Is it because I don't think that's right? Okay. Well, what does that said person have to do with you and your child and your family? Is it affecting you in any way? And if it isn't, then that's something inside that your ego's telling you because either you want it or you just don't understand it. But don't hate on that person because they're doing what's best for their kid is kind of how I look at it. Like, you know, but I used to be very judgmental. I will admit that. I definitely be like, why the fuck is that person doing that? That's weird because I was conditioned to do that.
Yeah. And well, we all were like, right? It takes like you said, it takes a lot to kind of like break that down and be like, hey, why do I think the things that I do and everything, even down to Halloween? I am that person now that I'm like, okay, why? Like I love black and spider webs and black cats and all the things. Like, yes, all the things. And I love all the things. And so I had to be like, but like Halloween, like trick or treating, like these parties, like all this, and so actually what I've been teaching Bryson about is we grabbed a bunch of books about like Sam Hain and like, you know, actual like Halloween, like how did it turn into Halloween and all these different things where it's like, we're learning all of it. And so then again, he can kind of learn how to like bring in his own ideas. Like maybe he does love the idea of like candy, like I'm a anti-consumerism person, so I'm like, oh, all the garbage and all the like it really gets to me. But I'm like, but also, right? I'm like, but also, my house is painted black, and I love everything dark and Halloweeny. So I'm like, where am I? Like, what the heck? And so yeah, just learning how to like really learn into yourself and look into those things. And again, that goes back to like learning how to learn and learning how to like regulate yourself and learning all of those types of things that we're really not taught. So now we're getting to this adulthood and we're back into that, that school mindset of just like judgmental, like she's doing it different than me. So, like, I don't know. And not thinking of like, maybe I'm interested or maybe I'm not interested or maybe I have questions. And then being the adults that you and I seem to be able to be and having those conversations when you don't agree and be like, why? Like, can you help me like grasp like, what is it that let me see. And the other thing is I should have said at the very beginning, but one of the things that actually happened with my husband and I is 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago now, we saw this YouTube video. It was this little boy. I still have it saved on my computer everywhere. And he called it hack schooling. And we saw this video. I don't even know how it came up, but we saw this video and he started talking about how he is a homeschooled kid and he calls it hack schooling because he gets to look at his interests and then learn interest-based. And at that time I was so like, I wasn't pregnant. I wasn't having a child, but I was very much like, if you have a child, immediately they should be in preschool and immediately they should be going to, like, they need to be they don't need to be all sucky and lovey with their moms. Like I was that person.
Yeah.
I could not understand why you wouldn't put them in pre-K. Why wouldn't you put them in daycare? Why wouldn't you put them? Yeah, get them learning, get them off with the other kids, social, like get them social, like bullshit. But anyways, that's who I was. And then I saw this kid, and I remember just being like, we were sitting on our couch, and like vividly the scene is still there. And I remember just being like, we are going to homeschool, because the main thing that I remember is he was like, I love to snowboard. And I love art. And so my parents were talking to me about how like you can actually design snowboards. So they got me in with the local snowboard shop. And now every Wednesday I get to go to the snowboard shop and watch them make snowboards and learn how it happens. And And I was like, you what? You do what? Like, I was like, that's amazing. And so I just immediately was like, I want to be able to do that. Like, I want to be able to, you want to learn archery. All right. So right now my kid's like really into like, first it started with like Avengers and like, you know, archery and like blah, 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 blah. And then it just moved on to now he's like every Tuesday, I almost said Thursday, every Tuesday he goes to archery. Currently has broken arm, so we're done. But we get to like go into like what he wants to do. And so, yeah, like that's something too, is like learning interest based and like really being able to be like, this is why I'm doing something. And yeah, like I think we just, as a society, we haven't been allowed to do that or even taught to do that. And I think then we look at people who are doing that, and even just online, like sometimes people are like, oh, those people who work online, and you're like, what, they get to go walk in the forest and have a great day and then go work and still make money, and like you're just mad, and it's okay that you're mad, but like look at why you're mad and figure out like how can you, like what is it that you can fix, because living in the anger, living in a place where you're just like judgmental is not good for you. It's not really changing anything. Like you can judge me all day for homeschooling, you can judge me all day for like connective parenting, you can judge me all day for social and emotional learning. I don't care. I do not care, because I am so confident and okay in what I'm doing, and I've decided where my values lie. So much so that, like I said, it's kind of annoying. Halloween's coming up, and I'm like, okay, what are we? I know. What are we learning? What are we teaching?
Where movie comes out, and you're like, I don't. But it's, or like, you know, a celebrity thing. You're like, I don't want to love this person because they're a celebrity and I know that what this has done, but you know, and there's still got to be a parts where you're still doing those things, right? But for
we always teach like having happy, because like that's the problem too, is we do, he learns a lot of things. We did take him, like when the freedom movement was happening, we did take him to Edmonton and explain things about like freedom of choice, which teach your child about freedom of choice and then try and parent him. It is not easy. It is not easy. Literally, he'll be like, Mom,
I'm not eating broccoli.
Like, yes. He'll be like, but Mom, freedom of choice. And I'm like, you're right. So I had to actually explain that there's that someone's always outlying your choices. You get to choose, but there's always going to be an outlier of choices. Society's not going to just let us run around killing people. That's not a choice. Like that's not an option. So like, for me, it's like, okay, so for dinner, for example, teaching him again, choice, personal choice, all these things that I think adults, we don't get. We're coming into like dinner time, and I'm like, okay, well, we have to have carrots. Do you want cooked carrots or raw carrots? The end goal is he's still getting those carrots, but he's learning how to make the choice. Yeah. And he thinks he has a choice, but he's, in my mind, it's like he's learning how to make those choices. And like, if he makes the wrong choice, again, going back to like life costs less when you're young. So it's like, you made the wrong choice, whatever, like
you'll learn, live and learn.
Moving on. Yeah. Live and learn. And I keep thinking like, sometimes I'm like, I think I've taught him so much in this little brain. He's only 7. And I'm like, but when as he gets older, and I really believe that we're setting them up for success, whether they're homeschooled or in school, if we're focused on learning the whys and the hows and like, not just the levels. Like I cannot stand when parents are like, oh yeah, my kid only got like a C or whatever, 50%, 60%. And I was like, it just bugs me, because somehow we have all these ideologies in life that like, oh, as adults, like, it's okay if you make a mistake. You'll learn. Like, we say all this shit, but then we don't let kids do it. And I'm like, it seems to make more sense if we apply it to the children, so that by the time the adults get here, we don't need to baby them.
I mean, why do it that way? Why not reverse engineer? And as adults have to relearn these years and years of bad patterning that we probably already put on to other people, you know, like it's so wild. And one thing too, going back to like teaching them why, you know, while you have that opportunity, let's just say I know kids don't like healthy eating, but guess what, guys, as adults that didn't healthy eat as kids, like it's very important. I think we can all agree on that. Mm-hmm. And just because a kid doesn't want it, doesn't matter. But again, teaching them, why do I need to eat a carrot? Why do I need protein? Well, guess what? Protein is actually going to build your muscles. For little boys, how exciting is that? Oh, I'm going to build my muscles and be strong like dad or whatever, like, because proteins, and there's a learning moment right there. Again, I'm not a parent, but
no, but
these are things. That's what I think is like, and it makes me so sad that the world and these systems have made parents so disconnected. And one other trend I want to bring up that I hate is, and please, people don't take this the wrong way, I'm sure mothering is hard. I cannot imagine, but I'm so tired of this new toxic where it's motherhood is terrible and children's are trash and there's so much work and they're horrible beings.
And
as a woman,
freaking mad. Like, I'm like, then why did you do it? Like, I'm sorry, but like,
I know. And as a, like one person that doesn't have a child, I always feel hard to say that, but I feel like I'm allowed to say that because I'm one that can't have one. And now I have to find, which is fine. We know we have to go to alternative means. That's okay. I'm okay with my journey and all of that. But I listened to this new, and there's a couple women that I know that are in their 20s and they're saying this to me like, oh, I'm not worried. Like, and I'm not trying to be this way. Think what you want. But this one girl, I love her to pieces, but she was like, I don't care about if the vaccine hurts my fertility because I don't want to have kids anyways. And she was 20 years old. And I was like,
it's just like, you don't know that for real. And that's one thing I feel like we have to like reiterate to people is like, again, we were talking at the very beginning, different seasons of life, we're transitioning all of the time. You do not know. And that's why going back to like, we talked about things like teaching stuff in school and we're going down the transgender ideology. Like I cannot stand it because I'm like, these are children who do not know. Like we know as adults that I don't know how I'm going to feel next year. I don't know the events that are going to happen in my life. Like I don't know. So like, how can we know? Like, just that makes me crazy. And like, I don't know. There's so many. I feel like, again, we're kind of like, I'm like a squirrely person a little bit in this topic, but like, that's okay. I'm just like, and, but like, the toxic shit really pisses me off. Like, I don't know. I'm sure you saw it. Like Meg shared a thing the other day about like toxic, like husbands and like the relationship, how people are always talking negatively about their husbands. And for me, that's something about our children. Like they hear you. They hear you when you say this is frustrating. They hear you when they say, oh, these, like, I'm just so done. I'm just this, like, I will explain to Bryson, like, sorry, mom's feeling frustrated. It's been a really long day. We were really busy, blah, blah, blah. Can we both take a minute? Maybe you want to go, like, do your Lego. And, like, I am not someone who's not going to pretend like I get pissy, I get angry, he gets pissy, but we've taught each other, like I teach him that like it's okay to be angry, it's not okay to be mean. It's okay to be frustrated, it's not okay to be mean. It's okay, like you got to take your moment. If you need to take a moment, sometimes I'll say, I just need to go to my room for a minute, buddy, okay? And it's okay. Like I'm teaching him, again, social and emotional stuff, but like these kids can hear you say that it's frustrating. And not only that, the more that you tell yourself something, the more that it is that. And the way that we talk about parenting is like, you guys talk about it like the most awful thing ever. Yet you are literally raising the next generation. So you're literally telling us that we're the next generation, the rest of the world's just gonna be shit. Because all these children are shit and they're all bratties and they're all just, and it's like,
parenting's terrible.
Make it better. And like, do you not love them enough to want to be better? And in those moments, like, again, when they're frustrated, like, you're an asshole sometimes too. Like, you're grumpy, you're angry, like, whatever. And so if your kid's being like, like, can you not just, like, have that empathy and be like, man, I am sure you're having a rough day. Like, is there anything you need from me? Like, is there something, can we talk about it? And, like, with Bryson, like, there's days, like, we all do it. He's just mad. He doesn't know why. And he's just being like that. And I'll have to say, and I don't I'm a little bit of an anti, like send them to their room when they're grumpy. Yeah. But it gets to a point where I've said, like, do you need something? Can you please stop yelling? Like, da-da-da. And then finally it's like, Bryson, this is everyone's space. Because in our main areas, living room, kitchen, we're not allowed to throw fits. Yeah. None of us. Like, if you're really that mad, like, go
take it out.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it. And if I can't bring him down, then it's like, hey, head to your room and come back out when you're ready. And again, when you're ready is not up to me. So he can come out, and if he's still being like, then I'm like, it doesn't really sound like you're ready yet. And he will head off and then come back, and eventually he'll come out and be like, oh, I'm sorry. And they don't know unless we teach them. And all we're teaching them is that parenting sucks. And if it's essentially selfishness, really, because I'm annoyed because they're interrupting me. Like the parents who, like, realistically, like, I'm on my phone because I have to work for my phone, but Bryson will speak to me and immediately, like, and if I don't, I'll say, I'm really sorry, I was finishing something. What did you, blah, 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 because I'm very aware that is something in society that we are doing, and we're not focusing on these kids, and then we're just saying, what? And like, and answering them in this way that they're like, whoa, I just wanted to, and they can feel it. The kids are very perceptive, more than we want to admit. They can tell by the tone of your voice, the way that you're looking at them, the body language, just the energy in the room, how you're feeling. And maybe you're frustrated based on like your day at work. So then tell them that. Be like, hey man, like I had a really rough day at work today, and I'm not trying to take it out on you. I'm really frustrated. Can can we find something that's not so much talking right now? Because I just don't want to, because they should be allowed to say that too. And they should be able to know how to say that. And that's, that toxic, like, parenting shit just makes me so mad. Or the people who say, oh, you homeschool? I could never spend all day with my children. It's like, you don't like your kids? Like, that seems strange. Like, you're raising them, right? Like, and if you really don't like them, again, maybe you're not raising them, they're just off at school. So then question yourself. If you're sending them off to school and now you don't like them,
why?
Maybe there's something at school that's happening that's creating people we don't like. Like, I don't understand that at all.
Point, dude. That is such a good point. And it's not like to shake, because again, some people have to have that situation, but you have to be aware of that. Be
involved.
And think about it when you are as an adult at work, let's say, whether that's online or at a business, you spend most of that time, just like kids do, with those people. And you know how much that affects your personality, your environment, your mental health. Everything that you do is really affected by the people that you work around. So, and the company you're working for, right? Where they're directing you. There's no difference with the child, except, well, there is. That circumstance is the same, but children don't know how to regulate, don't know how to understand, or don't understand gaslighting or manipulating, or like you said, understanding what feels right. It's like, okay, well, you said it's this or this, but inside I feel like maybe there's a nuance to this and it could be that. And that's where our critical thinkers die, because then all of a sudden it's like, no, you're one or the other and you're not accepted. And if we don't teach kids that it's okay, right? Like, again, with boundaries, you can't decide you're a fucking cat and like, oh my God, just a spiral. I seen this thing the other day. Again, you can work with your kids through this gender ideology, how you see fit. It's your life. However, this one dad had, and I don't know if it was made up or not, but his kid came home and said his friends were identifying as cat. So he wanted to identify as a cat. So then his dad, they were at dinner. So his dad starts immediately taking all of his food away.
Cat food, please.
He gives him cat food, tells him, Scrat, get off the table. You're just a cat, get on the floor. And the kid's like, what the fuck are you doing? And they're like, okay, well, this cat's not been neutered yet. We should probably call the vet, neuter this cat. And like literally, and the kid was like, what the fuck? No, dad, I just want to be a boy. And he's like, okay, come back up and have dinner. Again, there's lots of big questions and there's a lot to learn here. But again, that extreme of like, okay, you're not sure if you're a girl or a boy, to being like, oh, you're definitely a cat.
Right.
Which is a species.
Well, even that, like, going off on that, like, I've had conversations with, like, I get it, like, I can't say specifically how I would deal in that situation. I know what my feelings are towards that, but I also love my kid more than I can really explain. So I don't know what I would feel in that situation, but I definitely know that I'd be very against him doing anything that would be irreversible, right? Yeah. Anything that is changing his body, genetics, dynamics, whatever. I think if I had to support him in other ways, we'll see what would happen at that point, but I definitely don't feel like we should be allowing like the younger generation. And I said this the other day, kind of going back to the furries, because can you imagine science? We love how science can evolve. Can you imagine we get far enough that we're allowing, furries to be them furries, and it was like, oh, that would never happen. It's like funny, but we say that all the time. We continue to get to places that would never happen. And so it's like, really, it could. And so like, let's just like be real and have these conversations and be aware of it. And like, know what you're doing. And again, that just comes down to like, if your children do have to go to these schools, because I can talk all day about how enriching and amazing and perfect homeschooling has been for us and for a lot of the people that I'm around, because again, that's something, creating a community. Like I've created such an amazing community, and based on, again, being real. So coming onto my social media and knowing who I am, when I meet you at a park, I am who I am. I'm not going to pretend, because I don't want to have to pretend all of the time. So we've created like a really awesome community, and like, it's been beautiful. And that's where it comes down to, again, socialization with kids. Like my child is never not with children. Every single day he's with other kids. He's an only child. And I honestly believe he gets more social ability or social time when he's homeschooled than he would at school, because at school he'd have to sit on a desk and he would really only get to like actually socialize. He's not allowed to talk. He has to listen. He has to stare forward, do the work that he's told to do, even if he doesn't really understand it or want to or whatever. And then not only that, but at the playground, live in this like hierarchy situation. Like he has friends that are like 12 years old. Just yesterday we were at a barbecue and it was all these homeschool kids, and him and Jasek were running around this little boy who's 12 years old, and my kid's 7, and they get each other. And it's honestly because the kids get to be kids longer. That 12-year-old isn't the 12-year-old you would meet at school. He's a 12-year-old who still runs around outside all day and just plays, and he's just great. And so again, getting to see that beauty of letting the kids be the kids. And that's something I actually, I was at Meg Garland's like barbecue, and I met a teacher there. I know, it was amazing. one of the ladies I met there was a teacher, and she's currently not teaching, just with like everything that's been, she's not really comfy. And it was really, really beautiful to speak to her and kind of validate like my decision in that like she wants to be able to do what we're doing in the school system. But it just, you get broken down. And that's what she was talking to me about, is like, you just get broken down. And so that's where a lot of the teachers, there are a lot of these things in the works. And like, again, the magic of the past 2 years, like she's also looking at things like forest school and pod schooling and things where we can put this beautifulness back into the education system because it's there. And then again, people will go, oh, I can't pay. We need it to be public. Well, there's mamas, I promise you, there's mamas like trying so hard to fix the system for the people who do have to utilize it, because they're just, again, there's so many amazing portions of parenting and raising these kids and helping them be so resilient for the next generation and everything that's coming up, that we can do it whether they're in school or whether they're home with our parents every day. And we can do it no matter what. We just have to work together and get there, right? And at this point, it's not. At this point, there's still a lot of like homeschool versus school, and it's like public school. And to me, it's not homeschool versus public school education or like the school system. It's the next generation that we're pushing out into the world. Like these kids, regardless of how they're learning, need to know so many things. And again, it's a matter of, we don't know what the future is going to look like. None of us thought the last 2 years were going to be what they were. Like,
some people still don't know that they were.
That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Like
morning on that topic.
Right.
But it's true though, right? It's true. And I think that's what really cool. It's at the end of the day, it's just like when you have a divorced family, it's not mom versus dad. It's what's best for the child. If your child and your family can only do public schooling or whatever's available, that's fair. But know that then maybe there needs to be some sacrifice for your personal activities or you're scrolling aimlessly. We all know we do it. Those types of things that, yes, maybe, but being aware and just being present. Okay, if they have to go to school because you have to go to work and that's how it is, fine. Then maybe dinner is a dinner with no devices and no TV and talk about your day. Like, again, bringing back that family unit, whether that's mom, dad, and kid, whether that's mom, one kid, whether that's mom, dad, cat, whatever it is. If you're especially singles, like for us, we don't have kids, right? So sitting at a dinner table, having that communication sometimes is hard because you just go sit in front of the TV because you've been together for, but I always try a couple of days a week to sit at the table and have honest, like maybe the TV's in the background, but have real conversations and those types of things. Like all of us are in different situations that we all can't sometimes. Oh, the cat's scratching at the door. He's had enough. He's like, it's been an hour, Mom. Let me in.
Don't you know?
You're done now. But again, coming back to that, it's more about not homeschooling school. It's about what's best for the kids and having accessibility for everyone, understanding on both sides what's actually happening, what's good for your family, taking the judgment and the ego out of it entirely and come back to the core and the bigger picture, not what's popular in your group, what's popular in your province, what's popular with moms or on the social media page. Look inside and what feels good and move towards that. If homeschooling is what you want to do, start connecting yourself with women like Lindsay who do it, who share it, and start, take what you need from her. Maybe that way isn't maybe this pod thing sounds a little bit more than what I could do. How do we help get us to there? Don't just expect the pioneers and the leaderships to do it all for you. If you want to see that progression, be a part of the change and the revolution in that, right? Maybe I can't do it right now, but you know what I'm doing with it? I'm sharing a show to all the people that want to do that. I'm going to be promoting this for other people. I can't really do anything to help the homeschooling, but I can get the word out. I can make awareness. Now, some teachers then have this ability to do it. They have to break themselves out of what they know to be vulnerable, to do this, to be mocked or whatever. But that's how things change. That's how we make changes. Is we don't like it, we be the change, right? So
totally.
And especially with this, if there's something that you want to take in and it's like, hey, maybe I want to work towards this, then do that. Or even just have the awareness that maybe what we were taught 20, 25, 30 years ago is not what's being taught now. And back then more care was taken, and look at how fucked up we are. Even less than that is happening now, and more parents have to work. Or we didn't have this. My parents didn't have this. No. My parents didn't have a fucking computer. They had the news, which was bad because we probably could have used some social media for some of the truth stuff. But really, and again, it's teaching these kids that it's not division. It's not those kids versus us kids, this school. It's all of us learning the best that we can. And I feel like you're giving your son the best opportunity to learn, because some of us are intuitive beings and that's actually how we have to live our life. And if we don't, we're very frustrated, angry, that type of people, right? So schools and systems aren't meant to. And if you know your child's not, I really, really, really think you should look into that and push past all of your fears and your biases and narratives that you've heard in your head and really think, how could this help? How can this help me bridge me and my kid together? How can this bring us together as a family? How can we do this back and forth? You know, maybe dad's gone 2 weeks and it's all mom. I get that must be fucking hard. Is there another mom that has an opposite work schedule? That's a stay-at-home mom, homeschooler, that you could be like, hey, this week you have the 2 kids, next week you know what I mean? It's again, community and not having the ego that I can do this on my own. And this is the only way I know how to do it.
And realizing you're not doing it on your own. Like you're not.
Yes, you're not. And there's people that built these systems, and maybe what it needs to happen now is finding those homeschool kids that are super successful. Maybe that's the next step is, you know, maybe some kids are on, maybe parents are unsure, how is this going to affect their future? You know,
well, if you look at a lot of our famous people, I was actually, we were talking earlier about making the engineers and all the people, a lot of them did actually go to school. So like, yeah, we definitely need to like, you know, get those minds, those next minds and all the engineers and all them. But like, if you really look into some of our big names, like some of them didn't go to school.
I didn't. I went to 1 year post, like, well, I went to normal school, but like I didn't do university. And like now, yes, I'll do courses, but I don't need to go back for 10 years. Now I've done it. I've got the experience. Now I just need to take a course to like round out my knowledge and take me to the next level. But I'm not going there with tons of debt. I'm not saying I did it right, but I held this idea that I was nobody. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't smart. And I still have this narrative. I'll go into a boardroom with all of these, like, you know, wherever teams meeting now, because that's what we live in, with, you know, directors and VPs. And I'll have moments where I'm like, wow, I'm not as smart as these people because I'm not educated. Nobody has ever said that to me. And in fact, they all get mad at me for feeling that way. But that is a story that I've been pushed on myself, and it has been so hard to rework. So why can't we do that to the next generation? Let's talk about trades and schools. And some people just aren't meant to sit in a fucking thing. Like you said, you don't have, go back to this too. You don't get interaction at schools. You might think you're in a room with a bunch of kids, but you only get to talk when you're allowed, when it's group time. And 90% of the time, you never got to pick your group. You were pushed with people you didn't like. Sometimes those could be your bullies. Sometimes those could be, you know, crazy. It just didn't work. It would be more if it was more internal, like you said, intuition based and being like, okay, we're going to make groups. Yes, you don't want kids to be left out. But when that kid's left out, isn't that a signal to be like, why is that kid left out? Maybe we should work at the social skills, or you know what I mean? Like, again, we're going on too much feelings to a degree, but it's not the right feelings. It's not gut emotion and what feels good. It's what your brain has.
It's worrying about what other people think is what we've taught. Right now we're teaching like to be sensitive to other people's feelings, which I get to a point, but I feel like we're losing being sensitive to our own feelings in that process. Is like, I'm worried to say what I think or feel because I don't want anyone else to be, you know.
And it's been like, and it's teaching, and it's like teaching myself, like, okay, just because someone says, hey, I don't like people that work in the cannabis industry. Do I need to go home and cry about that? No. Okay. Then you don't. That sucks for you that you won't open up your mind to this type of people, but I'm not going to take that personally because I think I'm a great person and I don't need every single person in my life or whatever. You know what I mean? But we have to teach kids that just because someone doesn't like what you're doing and you feel good in it, that's okay. It's going to fucking happen, man. And if we try to avoid that and try to bubble them, they're not learning. It's toxic positivity. They're not learning real world. So they go into work and all of a sudden their boss is like, I don't like what you fucking did. Redo it. Get out of here. Are you able?
And that's where there's like super misconceptions, right? Like, again, we went back to like the socialization with homeschool. Like, I don't really feel like they're really socializing in school, but that's okay. And then it comes down to even just, I forget where I was going with that, but
but just not being able to handle real world stuff, right?
Like your real world things. And like you're being told what to do. And like when they're in this real world and they're having to actually deal with it, it's like people think quite often, like I was saying earlier, if he doesn't like a paperwork, I kind of find something else, but it's because I want him to like to learn, not because I'm like, okay, if it's hard, you don't have to do it. Like, no, it's actually super opposite. Like you can do hard things is something that we always talk about in our house. And so I think that when people think about homeschool and they think these kids aren't really learning, these are the soft kids. It's actually a lot opposite. I actually have a homeschool friend, his mom just put him in a firearms course. Just yesterday, he finished his firearms course and he's 11 years old or 12 years old. He's 12 years old now and he just finished his firearms course. And so it's like, they're not soft. And not to say that just because he knows how to shoot and go hunting, that makes him not soft, but it's like, you think that we're raising these like soft little babies who can't leave mommy's side when really like the entire purpose is like, I send him outside and say, go bike around, you know, I have those moments where society tells me like he's going too far, like, oh my gosh, but he will just like, he's just doing down the road behind our house and back. And it's like something that a lot of kids don't get. Like they go to school, they're in there and they get picked up from mom, and then they're with mom, and then they go to like hockey, and then, so they never get free time or free space to learn like how to make those mistakes. And so like I mean, again, I could go on for probably 5 hours about how much I love homeschool and all of the things that like I think I get to add. And I think that I have such a passion of like I get to do this homeschool, but I know that so many people don't, so we got to make it work for other people so that these kids can get these things no matter where they are, right?
Yes,
like
and that's what I mean. So, if you can't do it, that's fine, but there's a lot of good nuggets in this episode that you could be like, hey, be honest with you came to our show because it's called fucking Be Real. So be real with yourself. And where are some places that you're like, I have put this in the hands of the system to take care of for my children, and maybe it's not working out like I want because the collective now in their thoughts aren't exactly lining up with me. And now, like you said, now I'm coming home with this kid that I don't like. Well, that should be a mini version of the two of you that are together. So that, to me, like I love it when people are like, oh, they're my little best friend, like there's got to be some separation. They have to learn how to be outside of that, but you balance that and you actually have more time to do that in a proper way, or that you feel is more aligned for you guys. And I think that is fucking crazy and amazing. And I think we could talk about 5 hours, but before we jump off the show, let's go. That's my cat. You probably were like,
it was my cat for a second. I was like, wow, my cat's loud. I have pets.
He's real mad at me today. Anyway, so if parents want to get into this, we've talked about like, I honestly don't see any cons because for the most part, it's more of a situational con, like
Definitely.
If you were in the position to do this in all ways that feels good for your family, I don't see a con in it. The only con would be is if you can't financially do it, right? Or you have some restrictions, but where would parents start? Where did you start to look into this?
So where I started to look into it was first to look at where I live and like what is legal. Because there are like, if we're looking at, I'm sure you have people who listen that are down in the States or in different countries, but there are some states that actually try to make it feel almost illegal to homeschool. And it's really not, but there is places that it does feel that way. So you have to kind of really dig into like, what is my requirement? So I'll talk about here in Alberta. It's different in BC. It's different in Ontario. You do have to look into your what you're allowed to do. But I'll be honest, Megan and I talked about this, it's hard to find. The best thing to do is start by finding people that have done it. People that have done it. So if you're in Ontario, if you're BC, find other homeschool groups. You can find, like, we have social media. There's tons of groups. There's tons of people. You can find them and just kind of ask, like, in our area, where do I start looking into this? But the first thing usually is with school boards and like, what am I allowed to do? Here in Alberta, there's a list of school boards that will accept homeschool.
Sorry. Allowed to do with your children. I just have to pause for a second.
Allowed. Yes, allowed.
I understand that, but I just want everyone to hear that wording there because that's how they make you feel, like it's allowed. You do whatever the fuck you want with your kids, but allowed.
Yes,
please carry on.
Allowed. So, and that's the thing. So even where it feels illegal, you can just fully be not part of the system whatsoever. And again, you got to go down the realms of like, how do I do that in my particular area? But there's the option of being completely not funded, not have anybody talking to you. You're done. You're good. You just do your own thing. And that's just pulling out completely. And just you fill out a piece of paper, at least here in Alberta, you fill out a piece of paper, just say, I'm homeschooling and I don't want any funding. And that's it. You're just done. You're out of the system. You just teach them.
Do you pay
and basically
taxes for that?
So you still have to, that's the one thing about that's why we did our funding, is because you're not exempted from taxes. So if I'm paying, I might as well take that money. And so some people look at it as, if I take the funding, I'm then attached to the system in some ways. So there's two sides to that some people are like
fucking you to begin with. So if you didn't pay that taxes, you wouldn't be looking for that funding. So
So and so there's like, that's like a nuanced conversation that can go around in circles forever. But I personally think that taking the funding is a great idea because, and there's that fear. I won't pretend I didn't have it. I was like, are they going to bug me? Is it going to be like, they want to know where he's at levels? Is it going to be just like school at home? Because that's not what I want. And for us, it wasn't. And again, comes down to that word allowed. There's homeschool boards that support, we'll use the word support unschooling, which is more of what I do, which is kind of like creating curriculum, or just letting him be free and just learn as he does. And then there's school boards that would prefer you to give them like the curriculum. So there's curriculums you can look up online, like the Brave and the Beautiful. There's something called Math UC. So there's different curriculums, and then you just let the school board know, okay, for math, we're going to be using. So we use one called Wild Learning. So it's all outdoor stuff. So I was using Wild Math and Wild Reading for just like curriculum sort of, so I can know like what should he be kind of learning in terms of like, obviously we're past 1, 2, 3s, but are we on to multiplication? Like, I don't know. But also that's the thing with homeschools, it's very much how he learns. Like we are moving on to things that technically are older grades, but it's just, it is what it is, right? So it's good. But so again, just looking into what's allowed in your area, and then whether or not you want to be connected to something or be completely taken out. I'll talk from Alberta's standpoint, just because that's what I'm really, really aware of. And in Alberta, you can look at the school boards. There's school boards that will support your style that you're choosing, because that's another thing. Before you even get to this point, you're kind of deciding like, why do I want to do this? Like, where are my values and how they're learning, so that you can kind of figure out your style. Because there is tons of different styles, unschooling, traditional, like Montessori, like there's tons of different styles of homeschooling. I like to call myself an unschooler, but really I take everything and just mush it to whatever is working for us. But once you do that, then you can get funding, and like once you filled it out, you get approved, you get your funding, you then can put that funding towards anything. So Bryson, for example, I have like those 2 curriculums, and I send my money in for, like I send my receipts in for that, get that money back. And then everything else, I just pay for his archery and his swimming and his climbing and those types of things. So he's in a lot of programs that I don't have to pay for out of my pocket. So, which is great. And that's again, where he's getting tons of different socialization in different aspects and different places with different kids all of the time.
And different kids, right? Like different kids with those different, not just shoved with 30 kids because of that
same
age.
Ones.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, always different aged kids. His library class is aged 6 till 13 is his library class. So there's quite a mix in them. And she does basically the same project, but it's, harder for the older kids and younger and blah, blah, blah. So basically just kind of figuring out what you're allowed to do in your area. I hate using the word allowed, but it really is just the word that kind of
I just think it's funny. It's funny that we have to say that now, because it's just like when you really think about it, you're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I could pay rent at this, but I'm not allowed to have a mortgage, but I could pay more than what? Just shit, like just some of the wording, or like the other things like we're going to make Canadians see. And I was like, oh, are you going to make us? Because you ain't making shit the last couple of years. Dick. Like language matters.
That's something too. It's like language matters. I say we speak about that all the time, about like how words matter. Blah blah. Blah. Again, we'll go back into that. But basically,
right. But that's another thing. Is like being able to take that moment and teach that. Parents can't do that. But yes, please keep going.
Yeah, the big one was the word hate. I'm just going to touch on that really quick. He actually said, I hate you the other day. And I stopped and I said, do you know what that means? He said, I'm just so mad at you. And I said, well, it's okay to be so mad at me, but do you know what hate means? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, it's the opposite of love. You just said, I don't love you because you're mad at me. He's like, and it was like a huge, like he emotionally, he got really upset and he was like, I'm so sorry, but it was a teaching moment that I get to have, and I get to be like,
wouldn't have, that's what I mean. Sorry, I think I said it wouldn't happen with parents, wouldn't happen with teachers, not because they don't have fucking time,
they
right?
Just don't have the time.
Yeah, they have hate, and then that's like, oh, that's just a part of their word, but having like meanings to words, right? So it's those teachable moments that I feel like as we've progressed and the world has gotten bigger, we've gotten away from, therefore as adults, we just throw those words around for one example without having any understanding to the weight behind them. And did we actually mean that? Are we just reacting because we're working from here, and it's not always
that
the best
explosive brain.
Yeah, exactly. That conditioned thought pattern, not what actually feels good. Like, I don't actually hate this person, but I'm just going to say it because it's easy to just say words now, especially online.
Yeah. Right?
So find your board, figure out your curriculum, find your community for sure. I think that is a big one.
Community is a big one, because I know a lot of people, especially last year when some people weren't comfortable still with getting together. That's actually one of the things that I feel like I was really lucky. I found all the people who had a lot of the same mindsets as me. And that was what was great, is it was kind of like that time of the year where it was like, hey, do you guys want to go? Does anyone want to meet at the park? And you knew if that person is putting out that they want to meet at the park, they're probably not too crazy. So I can go and like meet, which sounds like super awful to say, but really it's like the people who weren't wanting to and were living very not aligned with me and were watching, like, I have an only child. I did not see a purpose of not letting him see other children and all those types of things. So when it came to like that isolation period, like that was not me. And so to find other people that were willing to not be isolated and were willing to, like, at Christmas time, like families were not getting together, and we had a Christmas party at a friend's house with 30 children. Like that was amazing. Like we were counting the presents. I was like, is there seriously 30 kids here? Like what is going on? And it was so beautiful, and they're all different ages, and they're just, so finding your community, figuring out your style, making sure like you have that, not just style as in like how you're teaching, but like your values. Like one thing that we talk about with our family, and we're actually working on it, putting it onto a wall, is sitting down and like talking about like our family values and like what is foundational to us. Like connection is a big one. Like we are very much like, we want to spend time together. We want like, and I'm aware he's going to grow older and like not want to, but like a big thing is like, I'm a snowboarder so that we can snowboard together. I want to hike so we can hike together. Yeah, you're going to go off and do stuff with your friends, but maybe on a Saturday you might be like, hey mom, you want to go for a hike? And we're still going to have those.
When you come back, right? When you come back,
still have these.
Yeah, it's like, I remember when we used to do that as the kids, and you fall into those values as you age, because you got to go away from the nest a little bit. But as adults doing that now, when he gets to that age, or even when he's in his 20s, there's going to be moments where he's like, I'm just craving a hike with my mom. And just, you know. I'm hoping so. We're hoping so. But like my brother's the same way. It just depends, I think, if you're a traditional person or not, right? Some people are traditional and hold on to those memories, and some don't. And I think those that have better ones, that had learning moments that they see were valuable as children, that their parents really showed up for them, seen them in all their glory. I really do. People think they come back to that. I'm the same way. My mom was very traditional. She made me feel very empowered for who I am to figure it out. And she never, you know, obviously there's points where they try to protect you and put you in a box, but never in that way, never my creative expression. I always got, and so the things that we did as kids, I still want to do that with her now. We don't have as much time, but like playing board games and card games, that is still huge. And now I do that with my spouse. And if we have kids one day, I'll do that. You know, those things are really important. And I think, like you said, everyone's so busy doing those things that you don't have as much time for that connection. And the beauty of homeschooling is that, hey, for one, financially, you get the hockey or whatever paid for. He's socializing, he's learning stuff, you're saving money, and that's not taking time out of family time. That's taking time out of the schooling, which is actually teaching other stuff. It's just not traditionally how we've all learned, because we've been pushed into that box. So anyways, I think that it's those things that you're doing now, maybe he won't do in that weird teenager.
Homeschool is a lot more outcome based than result based. Than result based. It's a lot more like, okay, what is this going to give us later on than did he get this to the level B? Like, is he reading to this? It's like, no, the purpose behind of what you're doing, and like the purpose behind reading, and exactly. Living intentionally. That's another family value. So again, like I said, just all of the things, deciding why, deciding your values, instilling that kind of stuff. And then also just, like you said, planning for it. If you can't this year, if you can't next year, if it's not something that maybe even looks like it's in the cards for you, that's another book that I'm coming out with or working on, is like homeschooling while they're still in school. It's basically like homeschooling with the system, because you have to. I get it. I'm not an asshole. I get it. You have to. And there's lots of ways.
And maybe next lifetime you come back and you go, hey, I remember my last lifetime not doing that. It's not me. So now I'm going to homeschool, right? If you believe in like regeneration and going through, you know, maybe that's just not something for you now, or maybe not for this kid, or maybe like not the time, and you'll have your moment where you're like, okay, you know what? This having a litter box outside, that's it for me. That's it. Or your kids come home telling you things, and you're, like you said, that are very like worrisome. Like when my brother was 12, my youngest brother was 12, he got onto the internet. My parents had no idea about the internet. He got onto everything, porn, drugs, like finding everything, because there was no filters. There was none of that. And that was so destructive, I think, to that generation. It's absolutely wild. And so now, like, again, we're always evolving. So we have to evolve with it. We can't ignore, you know, stuff just because we don't like it. It's there, you know, like technology. As much as I hate technology is advancing, I don't want to self-depend on it, but I would not teach my kid about it, because then that's not going to set them up for success, right?
And that's where there's like a lot of like, you know, some people like super, you know, anti whatever. And I agree. I think we have to teach them those little things, but I also think parents need to be really strong and remember that we are not parenting other people's kids. So when your kid comes home and says like, I want a phone, or I want Instagram because Billy Bob Joe has it, like, it doesn't matter. And that's going to suck. Your kid's going to be mad, and they're going to cry, and they're going to get whatever. And it's not going to be easy, but like, that's the one thing, like, parenting doesn't get to be easy. You don't get to choose the easy route. You don't get to say, fine, we'll just get him a phone because all the other kids in the class have a phone. Like, no, be the one kid without a phone. Do it. Like, be the strong parent.
Teach them how cool it is, and ask them, why do you want that? Do you want it because you actually want to do something, or do you want it because everyone else does? Because if you want to do something like paint or create, okay, then maybe we can have the discussion of that's what you have it for.
And then use it as certain times and have like boundaries.
And as a tool, but teaching them like, you know, like there's girls that are 13, 12, 10 on social media. I struggle to not do the comparison game after years of working on that myself. Especially let's say when it comes to like face, like, you know, and now we've got 19-year-olds getting baby preventative Botox because they're saying that that's a terrible thing online. And then, you know, that's starting this whole next generation of being like, you know, just whatever. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Nobody know. Yeah.
But that's what they're absorbing, and they're very young to that. So it's like, but again, parents are so busy. They want to fit in. They, you know, and I totally get that. And I remember my mom, I used to be so mad at her. She's like, I'm not here to be your best friend. Like, we'll be best friends one day, but I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to teach you boundaries and rules. And I think that's one probably big thing that parents have to probably work their mind about from going from a school to homeschooling. When you're in that moment, yes, you're the parent, but you're also the teacher, and you have to set up boundaries of being like, okay, if my kid, you know, obviously to a degree, but you can't let them always, you have to have that understanding that you're in school and this is where we're focused and there's boundaries here. Yes, I'm going to work with you. Like you said, you're doing that, you know, flow with what he feels. But like you said, you still have to have that structure. If he says he doesn't want to do it, oh, I'm just respecting he doesn't. Well, no one's going to grow up if we didn't do stuff we didn't want to do. We can see a lot of people that still live in their mom's basements doing that, whatever, for whatever reason, if you have to be there. But people that didn't engage in life, it's because they were never put through hard stuff to learn how to deal. They just go for the easier route, right? So there's got to be a balance. You have to, I think, put up your boundaries. And Haley said this the other day, and she's going to laugh. She said she doesn't want to be controlled by a little potato. You know,
no, I agree. I'm right there with you. Like, you're not the boss.
Yeah. And so it's like also having that understanding of like your parent can also be a different person to you, right? Like, you know, I'm mom right now, and I'm still mom, but we're learning right now. So let's focus in on like what we're doing, you know, and kids will be assholes. They'll be like, you know, or like, go, oh, I need water. I can't go to sleep, you know, and you're like, okay, you know, and just those little things, kids know how to do that. So as a parent teacher, you probably have to be very aware of those little fucking tactics your kids have, because they'll probably lay it out when it comes to learning.
Oh yeah, they will. Oh yeah, they will. Yeah, that's why I say, like, just be strong. Yes, yeah, freedom of choice. Like, there's many things that you just have to be strong. They're smart. They are smart. They're smart little beings. So yeah, just like teach them. And again, it's all conversation for us. Just saying, like, I will just tell him, like, yeah, you're mad right now, but unfortunately, this is how it has to be. I love you so much, but like right now, this is where it is. And you know, sorry, bud, but like.
And he'll learn that in other life and be able to then decide, okay, is this something like, you know, let's just say we're going in school and he's like, I just don't want to do this right now. He'll be able to decide, is this something that I don't want to do right now because I'm just not feeling it? Or is this something that I actually do not want to do entirely in my own being? And he'll be able to decide that because you gave him the option of like, yes, these are things that we have to do to advance ourselves. Or is this something that we don't want to do because it's not really aligned with who we are? You know, there's the things that you have to do, like, you know, you have to do your laundry. That sucks, you know, but, you know, maybe you don't need to go buy 1,000 pieces of clothes. So you don't have to do so much laundry, you know, things like that. And I think that is one of the coolest things about being able to homeschool is applying that and be able to show them real life stuff. Cause it feel like I learned all this stuff, but I wasn't taught how to apply it in real life. And then when I came up, my anxiety got rid of all of the thoughts in my brain and I didn't know how to function because I didn't know how to regulate my anxiety or my emotions that I had. I just reacted and that blocked everything from me. So I think that's a really big, important thing is that, okay, maybe traditionally they're not learning a bunch of shit they don't need to know to begin with, but they're going to have life lessons that connect that education to real life stuff. And I think that is more important than anything. Cool to learn numbers. Do you know how to do your taxes? Do you know, you know
what is the purpose? And
and I think that's huge because you've taught them all those basics. And now you can decide, okay, as like we weren't taught taxes. That's something in my mind you should learn, you know, and he can make the decision as an adult, you know, or in his teens being like, Mom, I want to go to a traditional school or whatever. Right. And like, you will get that option. That's the cool thing is like, it's not forever. And especially if you go through the right avenues with the right boards and you're doing the right things, that I'm sure if that changes, you could go back. Right. If it's not actually what's working for you, or like you said, find other things. Maybe it's socializing. Okay. Well, make sure that you're spending some time on group activities and what they want to do in their interests, and they can find real friends instead of being shoved in a class and being like, be friends with these people.
These people that are, and when other time in life are you ever shoved in a room with people who are only your age? Like, it's so strange. It's such a strange concept. It's like, this is just weird. But
it is. And it's not by personality, and we're not taught that. And that's why I think it's cool about like learning human design and learning like what you do. You'll be able to be like, okay, obviously, you know, like, and what I was reading or listening a lot is that a lot of people are like, your parents are always wanting you to be a manifestor. Go out and get all those things. And some people just aren't. Some people aren't the go out and get stuff. They're the, I'm just going to keep doing me and opportunities come to me, or I'm into their accent, you know, and we're just shoved into go out and get things. But if you're not that type of person, you're going to feel really off in the entire system and growing up. And if you have a parent that's in tune to that, they'll be like, oh, my child absorbs everything. So maybe being in a class full of 1,000 people is not going to be great for him because he's not going to get the most out of it, you know? So knowing that, you can then now focus in and get him set up in the right way instead of feeling frustrated for years and not absorbing anything and just feeling stupid because he wasn't delivered the information how he takes it. Right.
Right. And as you said, like eventually if he ever did say, I want to go back to, or I want to go to school, I want to do whatever, but either way, he's going to have to go into real world scenarios eventually where he needs to know how to do these things. And again, another topic I can always go into is like just the years, the ages that we start kids at. Like for me, it's like as he gets older and he really expresses wanting to go to school, I feel like I've given him the tools that if he goes to school, he's strong enough to be resilient against some of the things that happen in the schools. Like when it comes to that herd mentality and the bullying and all those types of things that can happen, that we kind of send them off at 4 years old and we're like, go learn, like they'll be good. And it's like, so then by the time they're 16, 17 in, you know, high school, heading off to college, they're kind of like worn down by all of the stuff they had to do. Like imagine we built them up to be these like strong little like 10-year-olds even that are like headed off to school, which again, this is not really the society we've created, but like, is there a way that we can make these younger elementary things, like we've kind of got it in kindergarten where we're like, hey, this is more play-based because these are kids that are playing. Like, is there a way that we can bring that down forward. Even more, right? Like bring that down even more where kids are just like being kids and getting to learn that resilience and that like not worried so much on whether they can say and or the and like, you know, whether they're memorizing these sight words, but get them to be resilient in like who they are. And like, again, that social emotional learning I feel like is really lost within the school systems, and it creates older generations and kids in high school and in university and then adults who just don't have it. And
they can't regulate a damn thing.
They can't. And yeah, like I want to say like he'll never go into the school system, but it's not my life and it's not my school journey. And it's you know, if he has all the tools and I'm giving him all the tools and he ever says like, I got to go back, like I would let him try. I would let him try in grade 3 or grade 4 if he really wanted to. Like I don't want to, but I would let him try. I don't think he would stay. I know him pretty well. Like I feel like he'd be like, that was good. I'm good. A week later we're done. Like, cause just whatever. But yeah, it's just giving kids those tools, and as adults knowing that we don't really have those tools, and so giving ourselves those tools so that we can then teach them. So
to the kids,
whether you're going to homeschool or not, you got to like really get this straight so that you can help them get that straight, because 100%. There's no way 4-year-olds are resilient, and we're sending them into whether in Ontario, there's this thing called junior kindergarten. I had friends who kids, they were 3, they were headed off to school and they're 3, and I'm like, dude, like they can't do this. No. And then it's like they come home and they're overwhelmed and all the parents are like, oh, I just can't handle it. And it's like, does nobody see the cycle that's been the
connection?
Cool, whatever. It's like, I don't know. But yeah, like I said, I could go forever and ever and ever. But I think
don't worry.
A great thing.
It's your first episode, but it won't be your last.
Talk forever.
Did I not tell you? Like, it could go like 45 minutes to an hour. But if we really connect, we can make this go for like 4 or 5 hours.
I was like, we're past an hour. Sorry, I'm still talking.
I love it. That's why I said, that's why my initial thing was there's no time limit, because like I said, when we get talking, when we get to someone that aligns or they're learning and bouncing, it's great. And that's why we wanted to start the show, is have these conversations, know the people you can go and talk to honestly, and, you know, ask the hard questions, because we're okay with the hard questions. We're not afraid to answer. We're not afraid of what we're doing. We're not afraid to be wrong. We're not afraid to try again. We're not afraid to be vulnerable. We spend a lot of time being afraid on other things. We're not there now. And that's, and like I said, the school subject is because it is so universal. There's so much that connects. It's not just what they're learning. We agree that what people are learning to a fundamental degree is right. It's how, and the social aspect of it, and the progression. Is it going in the right direction in the public school system? I don't think it has for a long time. We can look at there's so much about it. But my point is that if something resonates with you today and you're like, this is something that I want, I've brought you someone. Okay. Maybe Lindsay doesn't know everything about your province or your country, because we are international.
Help you figure it out.
Exactly. She will help you get on the right track. Or how did you set yourself up financially? How are some other people that, you know, or maybe it's like a single mom I'm sure Lindsay has a lot of single mom friends that do it. She can connect you to someone in your similar position. And then y'all start talking, or you get jumped into the group and you start absorbing it, But my only ask is, if you go and talk to these women, please do not project your shit onto them. Okay. Really be aware when you're going into someone's DMs. For one, ask, hey, I have a few questions. This is something I feel like we need to do for internet etiquette. When you're asking for advice, asking for something, hey, do you have some space or time, or tell me when it can? I really have some honest questions to talk about this. I want to have an adult conversation. Sorry, I messaged one girl, I might get triggered. I apologize. Will you walk me through it as I'm learning this? And she was a spiritual healer. So she's like, absolutely, lay it on me. I was like, okay. It was about drinking on Canada Day. It was a really amazing conversation, actually, with our friend Sarah Khan. And it was really great, because I was like, I feel like you're saying that I'm a loser for going out and drinking for Canada Day. But I know that's not what you're saying. And I know that's a me thing.
Yeah.
Through this, what are you trying to say to me? Even though I know my initial thought is total bullshit. Can you help me? And she's like, yeah, I have the space. Let's talk this out. And it was so great. Yeah. So, message these girls, be like, hey, do you have space for this? Or can we arrange a time that you can, or can you just share me? First, before you get into these big things, ask if that person has space to talk, and just be respectful. If you don't agree, you can just be like, thank you so much for the information. Done. That's it. You don't have to be like, well, I think you're wrong because of this. You're coming into their space, asking them questions about a topic they know about. So be, respectful of it. And once you will find the greatest relationships. Like, just straight up, we are going to have a conversation with Brooke about marketing and sales. And we're talking about cold messaging. And I know you're very against that as well. And we had this conversation. You're like, hey girl, I do this. I sell this. I love your personality. I'm doing this. I'm here for it. I'm just letting you know. And I was like, hey, cool. Don't love MLM business model personally for my reason. No shade. I'm too fucking busy. I can barely keep my podcast going. But thank you so much for thinking that I would be awesome on your team. And you're like, cool, don't totally understand. You never changed me.
We're still friends.
We're still friends. Actually, if anything, it made us closer. I was like, wow, an MLM, someone that has worked in that model that didn't just huck and chuck me, or she actually was like, no, I respect you and I still love you. It's all good. Just wanted to throw it out there. Because how else would I know unless I understand people have to sell a product.
You do have to ask, but yeah.
Right, but it was like, hey, let's have a real conversation. And you can even, you'll even laugh at the little side digs I have. If you can't laugh at yourself, come on, That's why I said, thanks for laughing. I know it's going to piss off a lot of people, but it's, again, why does it piss you off if I don't like the MLM model? It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my life. I don't want it.
Like I said earlier, though, can you imagine the world we would live in if everybody would like the same? Honestly, I'm going to just say, if you haven't read the book, The Giver, read that book and you'll know what life would be like if everybody lived the sameness. It wouldn't be fun.
No. And that's the thing. So again, have adult conversations. I really think people should ask. And if you are mad and you can be in a space to have an adult conversation, take the opportunity to grow there, right? See that as hey, this is an old thought narrative pattern. I like this person. I really respect this person. And she's saying this, but it's opposite to me. Maybe I should ask why, because we probably have more in common. And maybe I'm just missing a piece to the puzzle. Let's just say, for example, the BLM movement. We were going to go on a topic down the road, but that was a big thing. You don't always know things. And sometimes the media hypes things up, or somebody or a group, and you don't actually know the core of it. And you have that justice and you want to fight for it. And that's great. I understand, but there's always more to it. So instead of just being, like you said, thinking that homeschool moms are just emotionally babying their children. Right. No, I think that we can say, especially now, that it's actually protecting their emotional health and teach them how to regulate it. Right. So if that's a story going off in your head, I would suggest you to be like, why do I think that? Anything that, go to the opposite and read why. And I bet you'll come out of it being like, well, maybe that's not for me, but I respect her for doing that. And I see why she's doing what she needs to do. I think that's all that it comes down to. It's just being I respect.
Adults just need to do that. Adults need to be able to have conversations. One of the things I love to do is to talk to people that I don't necessarily agree with, because I want to, I do want to understand. I want to round my thought process, because I also am very aware, I'm raising a human, not my child. He's my kid. I love him, but he's not mine. I don't get to tell him what to think or how. So when he does form his own processes, his own thoughts, and his own whatever, I want to understand all sides and all facets, so that if he doesn't agree with me, I can at least maybe see where he's coming from, because I've spoken to someone and I've understood those sides. So yeah, that's something I think society is lost. We don't know how to talk.
Oh my gosh, look at us. Okay, we're going on 2 hours here.
Right, we're big.
This has been so amazing. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you come back. And guys, too, if you just want to, it's Lindsay MacArthur. Is that all your Instagram handle?
Lindsay with 2 Y's and then .MacArthur.
Perfect. And of course, obviously, guys, as we post this, there will be in our highlights. I will tag her in the highlights so you can go and talk to her at any point with all the reels. Come back. If you've missed it, you don't know how to get a hold of her, you can always reach into us. We will connect you with her and those like them. You guys know our girl Meg. She's getting into that as well with some of her children. So there is more and more people doing it and coming out and willing to share their experience. If you're willing to open up and take that in as, not a new way, actually, a very, very old traditional way of doing things.
The way it's always been.
Just like everything with pharmaceuticals and natural stuff, but we won't go there. Again, we could fucking go to it. So welcome to your first podcast.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good time.
Glad.
I'm really excited. We'll have you back again after all this stuff has kind of come out and you've had some time so you can really show people. And it sounds like you're right on your path. You're right in that transition, right on the right. I just got goosebumps saying that. I hope that this is amazing, girl. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing your shit. Keep getting out there, keep pushing forward on this because it might not be for everyone, but it will be for a lot of people. They just need to realize that it is.
Totally.
Right. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you took a lot of tidbits from Lindsay. I fucking did. I feel like I'm so prepared if I have a kid. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to work at Walmart at nighttime and I'm going to, but again, thinking that if that's what you want to do, what online job, what personal small business can you start this year that could put you in that position? Time's going to pass anyway. Next year, instead of being like, oh, I should have, maybe start that. Get that out there. Start with how you can set yourself up to do these things, right? Don't be jealous that other people get to do it. And so, oh, well, just because she da. No, I'm jealous of that person because I want that. How did they get that? How do I get that? Help me, you fucking queen. That's how that goes. Okay. So make sure to follow Lindsay. Follow us, guys. Apple, Spotify, YouTube now. Make sure you're turning on those notifications. We fucking love you guys so much for time and time again stopping by. Until next time. Bye. Thank you guys for stopping by the show today. We appreciate you so much. If you like this episode and you want to see more, make sure to show us some love on our Instagram page, the Be Real Babe Podcast. You can follow us on YouTube. Make sure you're turning on those notifications for Apple and Spotify so you get notified as soon as an episode drops. Or you can become a member of our Patreon page with extra content and early access. But make sure to stay tuned for more realness coming to you next week, babes.